Hey guys, Michael Sanchez, violin teacher here. Hope you guys are having a good day. Today is a violin technique class. I'm going to be showing you guys some things related to violin technique and answering all your questions tonight. So hope you guys are having a great day and had a good Tuesday. It's Tuesday today. So I've basically been organizing all of the questions that I've been getting the last week or so, and I'm going to be sort of going through a bunch of those today. So let's just get right to it. The first section of today's questions are going to be introductory questions, just sort of general questions. And then the next set are going to be more beginner questions. And then the next sort of segment is going to be more intermediate. And at the very end, we're going to talk about the group classes. So we have lots that are sort of planned out and going to be happening with group classes. All right, so the first question I have is from Fran. Fran asks, how does one know when it's time to change strings? That's a great question. So basically, when you know when to change strings is mostly based on sort of the dullness of the sound. So when you find that your strings aren't really resonating as much, like you're not really getting that nice ring out of your strings, it's probably about time to change your strings. Normally about every 1 to 2 years, I would say for sure you want to change your strings. Sometimes before that if you practice a lot. Good question. Next question is from Joel. Joel asks, how do you practice when you're in sort of a small living space? Great question. So basically, as far as being in a small living space, you're probably maybe in an apartment, I'm guessing, or you have a lot of people around you. There's actually a tool that I highly recommend. It's called a Violin practice mute. And a Violin practice mute goes right on the bridge, and it makes it to where your violin will have 85% less sound. If that's the case, it's probably going to disturb your neighbors less, and it's a really good tool. I actually just sent one to my grandfather down in Florida as he was sort of nervous about people around him, sort of getting disturbed. So violin practice mute, they're sort of look like a little bridge. They go over the bridge of the violin. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them on my website, superiorviolins.com. Those are really good tools. So yeah, if you're practicing in a small space, hopefully it's bigger than, you're able to actually move your bow. I assume so. But yeah, you might be talking about sort of the issue with playing too loud. All right, next question is from Carol Irwin. Carol asks, what is the preferred humidity for storage in a violin case? Also, how do you prevent bow bugs in a case? Very good questions. So Carol, yeah, normally any bit between 35 to 50% is sort of a good range for humidity in your case. Any bit below 35%, you're going to sort of get into that range of, your violin is potentially going to get damaged as far as it's too dry. So try to stay above 35%. Some of you guys might not know this, but violin cases can actually get bow bugs. Bow bugs happen when there's a lot of time where violin case is sort of closed and doesn't actually open up for a while. So the solution actually is to sort of open up your case if it hasn't been open in a while, as technically bow bugs can actually get inside. They like sort of dark areas. And technically they can actually sort of chomp on your violin bow hairs and make it to where they start falling off. That takes a long time. I would say about a year before you start getting bow bugs into where you can actually see their remnants. But yeah, I've technically seen that with, like, when I used to work at a violin shop. I would go downstairs in their cellar or whatever, and they had all these violins, and I'd take a violin out and like the whole bow is sort of chomped up by these bow bugs. So it's pretty amazing how they can sort of inhabitate violin cases. So hopefully now you know that. All right, next question is, how can you tell if the bridge and or soundboard is optimally placed? It's a great question. So yeah, basically a violin, first of all, for those of you guys that don't know, a sound post is actually inside of the instrument. It connects the top of the instrument to the back. And if that's not in there, you're actually going to get a really hollow sound out of your violin. It's going to sound actually really bad. So you'll know when you don't have your sound post in. If you guys want to check to make sure it is in, sort of just shake your violin, and if you don't hear anything knocking around in there, your sound post is technically upright. The sound post can fall down, so you want to watch for that. But technically you can see it while looking inside the instrument. And if it's just in the perfect spot, it should be just below the E string side of the violin, so on this side. And if it's in the proper spot, it's actually going to make the violin sound that much better. So all the time when we're setting up violins on trials, we adjust the sound posts to make sure that they're in the right spot. You'd be amazed that just from here to just a little bit over what it will do to the sound. So I'll constantly, I'll give a violin over to my assistant. I'll play it and say, no, not quite. It needs a sound post adjustment. And we'll do that maybe 3 or 4 times, believe it or not, until we get the optimal sound. Great question. And you also mentioned the bridge. The bridge should be even with the F holes right in the middle. There's a little notch in the F holes, so that should be even on both sides of that. And then, yeah, you should never have your bridge sort of tilted down. It should always be right straight on, perpendicular. Cool. So hey, I'm giving away a rockin' rosin today. I did one earlier. I really like this rosin. It's pretty cool. Show you guys what this one looks like. So this one is looks like a mushroom, popcorn maybe. I don't know. So yeah, they're really cool little rosins for fun, and they technically are potent, so they're going to work well. And yeah, these are sort of a cool new thing we have on our website at superiorviolins.com. So yeah, if you guys comment on this post, you'll have a chance to win the rockin' rosin. So good luck. All right, let's take a look and see how many people are watching today's class. All right, looks like we got 23 viewers. Very good. Maybe we'll break our record later. Our record is 50. All right, so let's get to our next question. We're going to sort of hit a range of technique beginner questions. So if you guys are more advanced, you might want to just grab a coffee and come back. These are going to be more basic questions. So for those of you guys who have been playing under a year, this is going to be perfect. All right, the first question is from Fyrus. Fyrus asks, what is the proper way to hold a bow? All right, so the best way to hold a bow is to hold it properly. Biggest things to note are it's really, really important for the hand to be as relaxed as possible over on top of the bow. So many students, when they grab the bow, they grab it way too tight, as hard as they can even, and that causes bow bounces, it causes, screeches. So the first thing I always teach is make sure that the thumb is lined up right in this groove, so it goes right into here. Make sure the thumb is curved as well. So that's step one. Step two, try to place the index finger about this far over the stick. So here would be sort of not as ideal. So here would be more ideal as far as the index. So right now we have our thumb curved and our index finger over the stick. Next, just let your other fingers just sort of flop over the stick. And if you do it properly, they should be really natural and curved. You don't want them to be stiff. You want them just to be really natural, okay? So the pinky is sort of curved on top of the bow here, not like this. Very bad habit, I see this all the time with a straight pinky. So that causes bow tension and makes it harder to create a good sound. So make sure that your pinky's curved right on top. Try not to press into the bow with these two fingers, that's a bad habit. But yeah, technically if you do it properly, your bow hole should look something like this. By far, the biggest bad habit is that students make their thumb tense as they're playing. So they might start off with a curved thumb, but then as they start to bow, they straighten it out. And that's what I call banana thumb. That's the number one bad habit. I see that even with students that have been playing, say, 3 years or more. So make sure that doesn't happen to you. All right, let's go on to the next question from Wendy Moore. Wendy asks, why are the other strings vibrating when I'm doing pizzicato? Yeah, so basically pizzicato is a really good way for you guys to practice songs, because technically if you're trying to put everything together, both the left hand and the right hand at the same time, sometimes it can be challenging to do everything at once. So I highly recommend doing pizzicato, which is basically taking your thumb, putting it on the corner of the fingerboard, and just sort of picking the string to sort of get the notes. So if I'm trying to learn Mary Had a Little Lamb, instead of trying to do everything at once, I basically could do it like this. So now I can focus on left-hand fundamentals. So that's really good. Wendy, you're asking as far as why does the other strings vibrate? Maybe you're doing it a little bit too hard. You technically want just minimal pressure with the left hand. You don't want to press too hard into the fingerboard. That's a bad habit. And then you don't have to really grab and force the string too hard. Technically, if you're getting a dead sound like this, that means that you do need a little bit more pressure down. But yeah, it should just be very light that you pits, and it shouldn't really do too much with the other strings. Maybe you're just doing it too hard. All right, next question is from Mary. Mary Stephen asks, is it better to learn notes D1, D2, D3, or to learn them as E, F, and so on? Great question. So technically, I think it's really good to understand how to read notes with notation. And notation is basically where you're not just understanding the string you're on, but what finger you're playing it with. So technically, this is your first finger, second finger, third finger. So on the D string, if I put 3 fingers down, that could be called a D3, but that also could be called a G. Okay? I'll give you another example. If I put first finger down on the D string, that's technically a D1, but it could also be considered an E, like that. Now, for those of you guys out there that know math or like math, music and math correlate a lot more than you might think. Technically, D plus 1 equals E, or D plus 3 equals G. So if you sort of think that way, and like you start at a D and you sort of work up 1 step, 2 step, 3 steps, it actually helps you to understand more of the letters, right? Because to answer your question, Mary, it's good to actually know both. I like students to know D3 and the same thing known as G. So I highly recommend doing flashcards where you have, say, D3 on the front of the card with G, and then the back, sorry, let me say it again. You have in the front of the card the note on the staff, and then you have to say that it's a D3 and that's a G. So that's a really good thing to do. All right, let's go on to the next question from Marlene. Marlene asks, should I try to move the tapes if they're getting out of place? Great question. So I don't have tapes on this violin. I shouldn't have them, as I've been playing for 26 years. I shouldn't have tapes. But you will see them sometimes on my violins as I set them up for students. But tapes are really helpful to help you guys learn exactly where to put the fingers down, as playing violin is challenging in that it's fretless, right? A guitar, you can put your finger anywhere between 2 frets and it makes the same sound, whereas a violin, you have to have your fingers in exactly the right spots, which makes it more challenging. So if your tapes are starting to get a little bit off, as Marlene is asking here, it's important definitely to change them back and sort of get them back in place, maybe getting a new sticker or whatever. That can happen very easily if your hands are sweaty. Actually, it's a good sign that you're practicing a lot. So Marlene, I guess you're probably practicing a lot. That's great. So yeah, definitely try to get those back in order. I do have a video that's really helpful as far as how to place stickers. If you guys would like access to that, you can email me at michael@superiorviolins.com. I'd love to help you. All right, next question is from Kate Willen. Kate, how you doing today? Kate asks, are there any hand exercises that can be done away from the violin, like when you're at work? Maybe holding the pen like a bow. Yeah, I mean, holding the pen like a bow is good. Actually, a really good one that I like to teach, well, you technically have to have your violin, is the wall index drill. So if you have your violin around, actually this one wouldn't be good at work because you're going to disturb other people. You set your bow on the strings, and you put your wrist up against the wall at this point so that nothing is moving from here on down. Very important. This is a really good drill. You guys are really going to benefit from this. And put your bow on the strings. Make sure the thumb and the pinky are curved. Don't make sure they're not straight. And all we're going to do is we're going to sort of practice moving the bow, relying on the index finger. Okay? So we want to do something like this. Sounds terrible, right? It's not supposed to sound good, but it's supposed to make you rely more on the index finger. I actually told Guy Kern, I had a lesson with him yesterday, I told him to just do that for 18 days. If you have nothing else that you can, if you don't have time to practice, but you at least have 2 minutes, that's the best thing you can possibly do. Because after 18 days of doing that, you guys are going to notice a much better violin transition. What I mean by transition is when you're changing directions, you guys might notice that it's sort of hard to get a nice smooth transition, nice smooth bow change. Most likely that's because you guys don't have the established index finger yet, and how you're sort of relying on changing directions, making the bow move faster. That's all done right here. But unfortunately, if you guys are doing it here in the shoulder, or sort of by stiffening up your forearm, or really common by having the thumb stiff, then that's going to sort of make it harder for you guys to move the bow fast and to get a clean sound when changing directions. So I highly recommend you guys to work on this drill. Eventually it's going to be more like once you have more flexibility, but I showed you guys the other way because that's actually how you should start if you've never done the drill before. All right, let's go on to the next question. We have Rasha asks, is it possible that I have short fingers, or is it just my imagination? I struggled to reach the 4th finger on the G string. Yeah, so this could be one of two things. So there actually are people out there that have shorter pinkies than the average person, and they actually do struggle with reaching the 4th finger. So that could be you, Rasha. I don't know your hand setup. You can send me a picture if you want. A couple of students, I'm not going to say their names, I know have this problem. So, I mean, that's sort of very possible. But if you sort of have normal fingers as far as, your pinky isn't way shorter, Just having overall short hands, short fingers doesn't really cause a problem. It just makes it to where your spacings are going to be different compared to somebody that has bigger fingers. So the only problem that could come is if you do have that really short pinky. If you don't have that short pinky, then probably it's more related to your finger angles. So your finger angles when you play the violin, it should be like this, where your fingers are being placed down at this angle. But very commonly when students start to press down too hard, they start to change their finger angles. And watch what happens to my fourth finger as I do that. So it's supposed to be here, but let's say I press down really hard with my 3. You see how my fourth finger is now this way instead of that way? So that is a very common reason why students think they can't reach the 4, but it's actually related to their finger angles. Just overall, if you have any sort of tension in your hand, it's going to make it harder to reach. So really try hard to press down very lightly with all your other fingers, as that's going to help you have more of that flexibility from the 3 to the 4. All right, next question. We have just one more beginner question, then we're going to get into the more advanced or intermediate questions. William asks, I have trouble keeping my wrist relaxed. So is that something you could briefly discuss? Yeah, so when you play the violin, it's so important to bend the wrist as you're coming up bow. Okay, so many students as they play, they keep a very stiff wrist coming this way. So instead, they should be doing this as they're playing up bow, but they keep it straight. What that does is it causes bow bounce. It makes it to where you're actually relying on your shoulder to move the bow instead of relying on the small muscles. So that's a telltale sign that a student doesn't quite have the index finger concept down yet if they don't bend their wrist coming up bow. So here, let me show you the difference. So this would be incorrect. See that? This would be correct. Right there. So basically I'm going from this position down to here. And what's important to note is that as you come down bow, you actually don't want the wrist to go this way. You never want that. So I'm not going like this. See that? I'm just leaving it very natural coming down, and then I'm bending it coming up bow. Okay? So don't do this. I see this is a really bad habit. And then try to compensate, that's bad. So keep it relaxed, natural coming down bow, and then bend coming up bow. All right, very good. So those of you guys that are watching, if you comment on this post, you're going to have a chance to win my Rockin' Rosin on today's lesson. So this is actually a, I don't know if it's a mushroom or popcorn, but it's a pretty unique looking rosin. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to give this away to one person that posts a comment on this post. All right, let's take a look at how many people are watching the class. All right, we got 44 people. We haven't broke our record quite yet, but hopefully by the end of this class we'll be over 50. So thank you guys for watching. All right, so now we're going into the intermediate section of today's session. That's sort of been the format lately. We've been doing sort of beginner questions at the beginning, then more intermediate as we go down. All right, so here's the first intermediate question. Renee asks, when you get an impossible piece of music, what is the best way to break it down so that it's not so intimidating? Very good. So yeah, it's very important that you guys choose the proper level piece when you guys are playing violin. I see so often some students, depending on your personality, you might choose something that's way too hard, or some of you guys that are more very like perfectionists might choose something that's maybe way too easy. So you want to have that nice balance. You want it to be where in every piece there's sort of 2 or 3 practice spots that I would say are sort of challenging. And those spots you should practice more than just the whole piece. So that's sort of, if you guys can sort of tell by that, that's a good way to sort of see if you're at a too high a level or too low a level with your piece. As far as breaking it down, take those 2 or 3 spots and sort of practice them, say 8 times each practice session. I recommend, also going through the whole piece. That's good practice. Try to think about intonation when you're playing. Try to think about rhythm. Try to think about articulation. So many students just sort of play through a piece and don't even focus on accents, dynamics, tempo, adding vibratos more on a style standpoint. The elements of music that are so important to understand, and I've been a judge of people coming in and sort of wanting to get a score for playing. It's called Solo and Ensemble. I've been a judge for that. And there's 6 elements of music, and they sort of go in order. Start with intonation, rhythm, articulation, dynamics, tempo, and style. So those are the 6 things that I'm always sort of thinking about when I'm teaching students. So try to focus on some of those things. If you're not able to do it, then your piece is probably too hard. If you don't know what those things are, then consult with your violin teacher. Articulation is accents, doing portato, doing off the string or ricochet or different things, depending on your level. So articulation can also just be playing slurs. That's sort of like the beginning of articulation, is just slurring notes. All right, the next question is from Brad Stevens. How you doing, Brad? Brad asks, can you suggest any exercises for getting my fingers to be more flexible when doing vibrato? Even with light pressure on the string and feeling like I'm relaxed, my finger seems to lock up at the knuckles as a whole. Very good. So yeah, so many adults think they can't learn vibrato. They say that it's just too challenging because, my hands are too brittle or different things like that. I hear that all the time. Technically, it's a little bit easier, I would say, for a younger student maybe to learn vibrato, but I've seen adults just do awesome with vibrato. It's all about just what you do and how you do it. So, Brad, I don't know if this helps. I'm not technically seeing you play, but a lot of adults tend to really tense up their bicep when they're trying to do vibrato. So try to pay a little bit of attention to what you're doing here when you're doing vibrato. Technically, it's just the finger down, but a lot of students sort of have some sort of tension somewhere else, even if you think you're pressing lightly with the left hand. So try to sort of pay attention to other things going on there. You should never see this, the elbow sort of change from here to here. That's a bad sign. But yeah, I would have to see you play to sort of see exactly maybe what you're doing wrong. But everybody can learn vibrato if they have that minimal pressure with the left hand. It should be just basically jello, right? From the fingers down, where right here there's no tension. But I see that all the time. Students think they're not putting tension into their hand when they're doing vibrato or trying to play notes, but they are. So try to just really pay attention to minimal effort, height of hand high, finger angles back. Technically, if your fingers are just falling down, if they're not actually being forced into position, you're in a good position to do a good vibrato. So hope that helps. All right, Cindy Wolf asks, do you have any tips about memorizing music? Sure, practice, practice, practice. The more you play a piece, the more you'll sort of get that instinct of memorization in that piece. I could play something 10 times and sort of probably have it memorized, but it also depends on how hard it is too. So, if it's something that's in your head, like I already know this piece, then you're gonna have a lot easier time memorizing it. Whereas if it's something that you've just started learning, it's brand new, it's gonna be harder. So really it's just practice. It's just a matter of playing the violin longer and longer. You get better at that, at memorizing. Just playing it over and over again can help, but you technically want to make sure you're also practicing those practice spots. You don't want to just, fly through pieces all the time saying like, I always have to memorize everything I do. But technically, yeah, if you're going to play in a recital, a good way to sort of memorize is just to play it through as many times as you can. Eventually, you also build speed that way, just playing something over and over again. All right, next question is from Jill. Jill asks, how do you achieve good dynamics when playing the violin? Good question. So yeah, dynamics can be achieved. Basically, a lot of it's relying on what you're doing with the index, the speed of the bow, how much bow you're using. So technically, by the time this is the first time I'm actually playing today, that's crazy. So if I don't use a lot of bow, if I use very little bow, it's going to be easier to get a softer dynamic. If I use more bow, it's going to be easier to get a louder dynamic. That's just part of the story, though. It's also how much I'm pressing down into the bow. So if I'm not pressing at all, it's sort of going to only do so much regarding playing louder. But if I really press down and I'm using lots of bow, then I can really achieve a louder dynamic. So here's an example. This is how it would sound. Actually, I could play you guys a song, Surprise Symphony. It's actually in Essential Elements Book 1. This is where we first learned dynamics. Now I'm not going to remember the song. I got to go over and grab the Essential Elements book. All right, so right there, see how I'm using very little bow? I'm not really using a lot of bow there, but if all of a sudden I did that differently, right there, I was really pressing into the bow. I was using more bow. That caused more of a louder dynamic. But if I want to play really soft, I also can sort of pick my bow off the string a little bit. That sort of helps too. But ultimately, it's less pressure. Like that. So it's all amount of bow and pressure. Very good question. All right, next we have Donna Murray asks, can a classically trained violinist learn to fiddle? What are the challenges with that? I don't want to be some opera singer who does horrible covers of popular music. Very nice. Yeah, so every classical violinist can learn fiddle. I highly recommend for you guys to sort of expand if you guys have only done classical music. Learning fiddle is a lot of fun. Really learning anything that you sort of like and you listen to on the radio is fun and it can be done on the violin, anything really. So yeah, I highly recommend doing that. And Donna, definitely you can learn it. Actually a lot easier actually if you're a seasoned classical player. Some of the best fiddlers in the world actually are very classically trained. Check out Mark O'Connor on YouTube. He's an excellent violinist. He can play it with the best of them in orchestras all over the world, but then he can just play fiddle like you wouldn't believe. I remember listening to him the first time, his version of Tom and Jerry back in the 70s. Oh my gosh, I mean, he's like 12 and just playing fiddle like you wouldn't believe. But he was technically classically trained. So I always recommend somebody that like really wants to learn the fiddle to really get that classical foundation and then go from there to learn fiddle. So some of you guys would disagree that that's the best road potentially. The best fiddlers in the world, some of them that I know, never learned classical. So it can be done both ways. But I think classical sort of emphasizes technique and fundamentals, emphasizes sort of learning things, with a structure. Sometimes fiddlers can sort of be more just learning tunes and stuff like that. So it all depends. But try to have, no matter what you're doing, some sort of structure of fundamentals, drills, technique, scales, and then in the last sort of third of your practice sessions, play those fun pieces. All right. Oh yeah, and you asked also, Donna, what are the challenges in learning fiddle? Yeah, as a classical player, it's really challenging to improvise. So if you guys have ever tried to improvise and you're a classical player, it's really hard because you're so used to reading what's on the page. So even when I did that, at the time I tried to improvise, I'd been playing 15 years. And then, to actually do something else that's not on the page of the sheet music was like totally out there. I couldn't even fathom it. So that would be probably the biggest challenge, is sort of creating your own music based on chord changes and your creativity. You're sort of just used to reading the music. So that would be, I think, the biggest challenge. Very good. Well, let me take a couple questions from the audience right now, and then we're going to talk about the group classes here at the very end. So let me just take a couple questions here. So let me see what I can find. As I'm doing that, I can show you my cat Snowflake as I'm looking through my all the questions here. So by the way, you guys, if you post on my on this page, on this post right now, you have a chance to win the Rock and Rosin. All right, do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any yet. Vanessa asks, we'll start taking lessons as an elective at my university. Oh, very cool. My grandfather's 92 years old. He's still playing violin every day. I've had a 4-year-old learn how to play the violin. So literally it is a lifetime of learning. Madeline says, these videos are so awesome. Thank you very much. Carol asks, I am trying to learn Jerusalem Ridge. It is a tough piece, recorded at a slower speed, emailed to my computer and work. It's helping to hear it so many times. Very good. That's a good piece, Carol, Jerusalem Ridge. Practice makes perfect. Sess asks, what is the best violin practice mute? So yeah, there's really not a lot of things out there I would recommend as far as a practice mute. Just whatever ones can go all the way over the bridge. We have them at our website, superiorviolins.com. So I highly recommend anyone that stretch all the way over the bridge. Technically, you've got to make sure you understand the difference between a practice mute and an orchestra mute. An orchestra mute actually only goes over the middle two strings, and it's just made to just give a little bit less volume while playing in an orchestra setting, while a practice mute is actually made for practicing to limit the sound by 85%. So make sure you guys know that. An orchestra mute is a round rubber piece, whereas a practice mute is longer. You'll see the difference right away. But yeah, just make sure when you're searching for one, either on our website or on Amazon or anywhere else, practice mute is different than an orchestra mute. So good question. All right, so yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about our group classes now. And for those of you guys coming in late, you still have a chance to win Rockin' Rosin I'm giving away here at the end of the class. Hope you guys have enjoyed today's class. So it's popcorn, I don't know, something unique. But this is actually a piece of rosin, and I'm giving it away to one random person who comments today. So good luck to you guys. And by the way, I'm really interested in hearing your feedback and comments about sort of the format I've been doing with these classes. If you can email me at michael@superiorviolins.com. I'd love to hear from you guys, just how you're enjoying these classes and if you like the format. So yeah, the group classes, we had a meeting last Friday and it went awesome. All the teachers came in. We had 6 violin teachers and 3 students actually came in as well, so we can sort of see both sides regarding the violin teacher's perspective and the student perspective. So we sort of came up with some really good ideas. The coolest idea, I thought, was that the teachers really want to have these sort of group hangouts where they get to know you guys that are sort of the viewers. It kind of is a way for you guys to understand the technology that we're going to put into place. So technically, we're going to be doing these classes on Google Hangout. It's a really easy platform. Once you guys get in there, you'll love it. It's really easy. But right now, you maybe not have done it, so it's sort of this thing where you don't know how it works. So these sort of introductory hangouts are going to be free, and you guys can come in and sort of meet the teachers, hang out, get used to the technology, and yeah, there'll be a lot of fun. So the teachers will maybe jam, play a couple pieces, sort of give you the vision of this class that you might be interested in. So yeah, if you guys are interested in that, please join our Adult Violin Facebook page, which is facebook.com/groups/Adult Violin Learners. You can also just search for it right on the Facebook tab. You can just type in Adult Violin Learners. Join the group, and all the teachers will be posting in there, potentially also on the general Facebook page, I'm not sure. But yeah, they're going to be doing these awesome little hangouts, so it's going to be a lot of fun. We're meeting on Friday, I believe, this week, so we're going to sort of plan out the last little bits of the strategy of how to get you guys to understand the platform. And ultimately, these group classes are going to be a way for you guys to get to know each other, hang out, learn the violin. There's nothing better than just that face-to-face interaction. But technically, you guys don't have to be on video. You could just watch if you wanted. But yeah, I know some of you guys out there are excited just to see the teacher and for them to give that, face-to-face feedback and tips, which are really helpful. So yeah, right now we're going to have basically about 6 teachers that are all going to sign up to hold these classes. And that's going to be probably next week. We're going to be sort of starting the sign-ups. So yeah, hope to see you guys in the classes, and it'll be a lot of fun. Very cool. So yeah, if you guys have any questions again about anything, email me at michael@superiorviolins.com. So now we're going to give away our awesome Rockin' Rosin prize. I'm going to eat the popcorn here, give you guys some suspense. Maybe it's a mushroom, I don't know. So yeah, basically just for commenting, you guys have a chance to win this prize. I try to give away as many prizes as I can. If you guys haven't checked out my website, superiorviolins.com, we have Rockin' Rosins, we have instruments, bows, you name it. That's actually how I make my living. I teach sort of for free most of the time, and yeah, just have a service of offering instruments, bows, and accessories. So I hope you guys get a chance to check out the website. Also, violintutorpro.com is our sort of site that gives you guys access to our violin teachers. You guys can click and sort of ask questions on the website. We have an awesome forum. We have like just thousands and thousands of posts. I mean, it's literally just like, you guys won't even believe how many things are talked about in the forums related to violin. So yeah, check out violintutorpro.com/forums, and I'm sure you guys will learn a lot about the violin right in there for free. So, all right, here we go. We're going to give away the Rockin' Rosin. Good luck to you guys. All right, here we go. I'm going to pick a random winner. I'm scrolling through. There's Snowflake. All right, I'm gonna pick a random winner. Here we go. The winner of the Rockin' Rosin is Katie Packard. Katie, congratulations. You have just won the Rockin' Rosin. So you can email me at michael@superiorviolins.com, and I would love to give this to you. So hope you guys all have a good day, good evening. Hope you guys decide to practice your violins. We're going to have another class tomorrow. We still have about 30 or 40 questions unanswered tomorrow at 9 o'clock Eastern time. And then, I'm sorry, not 9 o'clock. We're changing it, guys, changing it. 5 o'clock tomorrow. Sorry, 5 o'clock tomorrow. And then Thursday, 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Eastern. So those two classes will be live right on Facebook. You can access them through facebook.com/ViolinTutorPro. Hope you guys have a good evening. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you tomorrow at 5. Congratulations, Katie. Have a good evening, guys. Bye.